Okay, so boys and girls, I wanted to start by telling you a little story today. This weekend, I was home in Connecticut visiting my parents, and I was sitting with my dad, and he said, I'm gonna go for a little bike ride. I'll be back in a little bit. And I'm like, okay. So all of a sudden, 2 hours go by, and I'm thinking, a little bike ride? Where did he go? So finally my dad comes home, and I'm like, Dad, how far did you just ride? He's like, oh, you know what? A quick 50 miles. And I thought, 50 miles? I didn't even know you knew how to bike ride. How did you just wake up today and do that? And he said, well, Jess, I didn't just wake up today and decide I was gonna go bike 50 miles. I worked up to it. He was like, every day for the past few months, I've been thinking to myself, what do I want to be able to accomplish today? And I sit down and I set some goals for myself. Some days I decide I want to work on my speed. Some days I decide I want to work on my endurance. And those days I set out to bike ride and I practice those skills. And I come home and I reflect on what I've done. He's like, I have this cool thing that keeps track of everything I do. And I sit down and I look back over it. And over time I say to myself, look at all this progress I've made. And what are some things I want to keep working on next time I go out to bike? And he said, and then, lo and behold, here I was today. I was able to go ride 50 miles. And I was like, that is impressive. I hope you're not going to ride any further than that tomorrow. And he said, well, Jess, what kind of person would I be if I didn't set new goals? I would just stay the same. I wouldn't get any better. And I thought, that's an interesting point, Dad. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, you know what? The kids in my class could probably use some of your ideas to help them in reading, writing, math, or any subject. Because to get better at something, what you have to do is go out and set goals for yourself and work towards those goals. So I was thinking, at this point in the year, you have worked so hard in Writing Workshop. You have made so much progress. And to get even better, you can reflect on the goals you've set for yourselves and set new ones. So today I want to teach you that powerful writers can reflect on the work they've already done to set new goals for the future. They can do this by looking back at their narrative checklists that they've used over time each year, hunting for areas that they've started to work on, or maybe areas you haven't even worked on yet. And you can ask yourself, what parts of my writing can I continue to focus on to make my work even better? And what strategies do I know that I could use to help me? And then you can set new goals for yourself each day in Writing Workshop and work towards those goals. So watch me as I try this. What I'm going to do is look back at my checklist from my realistic fiction piece that I wrote in October. And I'm going to look at the progress I've made so far this year. I'm going to look and say to myself, what parts of my writing did I start to work on? And what did I not yet do? And then I'm going to compare it to my writing that I just did for fantasy and see what kind of progress I made towards some of my goals. So if I look back at my checklist, I'm noticing, oh, this really stands out to me. I didn't even write a beginning that showed what was happening in my story. And then here I started to use some transition words and phrases, but it seems like one of my goals from this was that I wanted to get better at that. I also didn't use all the time details, dialogue, feelings to bring my story to a close in my ending. So I think those were some of the goals I had for myself at this point in the year. Now I'm going to compare to the work I just did in fantasy and ask myself, what goals do I continue to have for myself? One thing I'm noticing is I still need some work on my lead. Do you see that? It's a place that I want to keep working on in both my checklist from October and from June. My fantasy piece was still missing some of that. And I'm noticing, still with the transitions, I'm starting to use them, but it could be stronger. So I'm thinking to myself, if I had to set a goal for myself today in Writing Workshop, I think one thing I want to work on is maybe I could put them together and try to write a strong lead that uses some transition words and phrases. Because remember, to get better as a writer, you have to practice, practice, practice the skills that you want to work on. So I'm just going to open my writer's notebook. So my next clean page. And I'm going to say, in this entry in my writer's notebook, I want to work on a strong lead with transitions. And when I go back to write today, that's what I'm going to practice. So do you notice what I did? I took my checklists that I had from earlier in the year and more recently, and I studied them. And I said, what areas have I started to work on or not yet worked on across the year? And what strategies do I know that I could use to help me set goals to improve those areas in my writing? Because that's how I'll get better. Okay, so I want you to give it a try. With your partner, I want you to study your checklist and ask yourself, what parts of my writing can I continue to improve on? And what strategies can I use to work towards my goals? Go ahead, turn and talk with the person next to you.
Is my organization. Like I use paragraphs, different parts of the time when story showing a new person speaking. And I could also actually work on my words. I don't know why this is here. But I mostly need to work on my unique words, which is so much time into
I need to work on transition words because I really didn't have it. And I also need to work on organization. Also, I need to work on.
Okay, boys and girls, can I have your eyes back on me in 3? Eyes back on me in 2. And eyes and bodies back this way in 1. So I heard a lot of amazing goals that people want to get started working on today. Mia and her partner were noticing that on her checklist from October, one area that she wanted to start working on even more was writing a strong lead. And then she noticed that in her fantasy checklist, she had the same goal. That happens sometimes. Sometimes it takes a long time to accomplish a goal. So she was saying with her partner, maybe one strategy she could use is to try starting off her next piece with setting or dialogue or small action to really hook her reader and get them interested in what she's writing. And Eden and his partner were saying, you know, he's noticed that from one checklist to another, a goal that he still has is to work on his spelling and also to work on writing an ending that really brings home the meaning of his story. So I want to remind you that as a writer, it is your job day after day to set goals for yourself. That is how you improve. And it's something that you can carry with you whether you're doing realistic fiction, personal narrative, poetry, or guess what? In Reading Workshop, it could help you too, or in math. Goal setting is the way people push themselves to work even harder. So when you go off today to do your independent work, I want you to think to yourself, what goals am I practicing and working towards as a writer? And get started right away working towards them. You can go ahead.